Hey everybody, you had a new request this last week from Stuart, one of my subscribers, and he asked me a question down in the comments below. So the question from Stuart was, is it possible to buy 100 units before I get too old by buying property debt free? Or do I have to take out some mortgages along the way? The real answer, Stuart, is yeah, you can buy property debt free and get up to the 100 units that you're asking about. Now, you talked about properties close to the beach. Well, that depends on what the cost is around the beach, but realistically, you can have 100 units by buying property debt free. And I'm going to show you an Excel spreadsheet that I made for you, and I'll run through the numbers real quick.
The supposition is that he buys a duplex at $50,000 and that duplex brings in $1,000 a month in rent. Now you can see here I can lower it down to $750 or I can bring it up to over $1,000, but I'm going to leave it at $1,000. So that's one of the constant, is that the purchase price is at $50,000. We assume that for the debt-free investor, he has $50,000 saved up using Dave Ramsey's methods. That should take about 36 months or less to do. His current income, which is $50,000 a year, because he is single and no kids. Those are the things that I assume. Now, property management typically is about 10% a month. Repairs, I have that also where I can bring that up or I can bring that down. I'm going to assume 10%. It just sounds like a good round number. You got taxes at approximately 2% for property taxes, and insurance at about 0.5% per year. Now, I also am assuming for both of these equations that he saves $1,000 per month from his own job to apply toward purchasing new real estate. So that $1,000 is aside of everything else, so $12,000 a year from his $50,000 income, which means he's really scrimping. He's going to be putting on the side to save up to buy property along with the rent that he gets each month. I've got here that he's 31 years old, and I can change that as well. I can say he starts at 35, I can go down to 20, 25. It really doesn't matter, just changes the time frame. But I'm going to be trying to leave this someplace where you guys can gain access to it. And that's why I'm showing you. Now on the other side, on the side where you actually buy property with debt, the idea is that it'll take you, at first I was going to say that you're going to get $50,000 in 3 years, but realistically you don't need to save up $50,000 if you're going to buy property with debt. So what I'm assuming is that you have $20,000, you're going to keep $10,000 as a reserve at all times, and you're going to every time you hit $20,000 you're going to buy another property. Whereas on the debt-free side, every time you hit $50,000 you're going to buy another property. I'm going to assume that the interest rate is somewhere between 5% and as high as I want to go. I'm going to start at 6.5%. Now when you buy rental property, you typically will buy the rental property at 2% above what you would buy a house for. So if you can get a house for 3.5%, then you'll probably be paying 5.5% interest. So I'm going to start at 6.5%. I think that's going to be normal. In the upcoming future, as they raise interest rates, it's going to be probably considered low. When I first started investing in real estate, 7% was a good deal. So we'll be able to see what the numbers look like as the interest rate increases. I've taken the debt payment, which would be $40,000, because, well, if you're purchasing property, that's the constant, $50,000 to buy the property, and you put $10,000 down, that means you'd have $40,000 in debt. These are very simple numbers. I know they would change. There are some other variables also that I'm not taking into consideration, like closing costs and whatnot, but this is for ease of use. For each property, that means if you take that $40,000 on a 30-year loan, which once again would probably be a 15-year loan, not a 30-year, you divide $40,000 by 360 payments, that's 30 years, and that gets you $111.11. Then you also have to figure out that 6.5% interest divided by 12 months equals 0.54% per month. That's going to be multiplied by how much debt you have. So I've run the numbers, and this is what I found. Starting with debt free, if you buy a property at the age of 30 at $50,000, you earned zero rent, you paid zero in expenses, you have zero duplexes, but you are able to buy a property, so you do. That means the next month, which is 30.08, that's 30 years and 1 month of your life, you'd have $1,000 in savings that you put in there because you earned $1,000 from your job. You'd have $1,000 from your rent that you earned that month, which will go on the next savings month, and you paid approximately $225 in expenses because you had one duplex. Now that continues on, and once you hit $50,000, which would be at age 32 and 5 months, at age 32 and 5 months, so 2 years, almost 2.5 years later, you would have saved up $50,000 and would buy your next duplex. And then the next time you buy a duplex would be at the age of 34 and 1 month, which means now it's less than 2 years. The next time would be at 35 and 3 months, or 35 and 4 months. So now you've gone just over a year between that time and you buy the next property. What that means is each time you buy a property, as long as you're rolling the money back into it, as I scroll down, you'll see how long it takes. He wanted to have 100 units, so based on the numbers I have above, at the age of 48 and 48 and 5 months, he would own 50 duplexes, making $50,000 a month, assuming all the same variables I set up above. So that would take you approximately 18 years to get the 100 units he's talking about. Now let's look on the other side. On the other side, he has the age of 30, same thing. He starts off with savings of 10, that's his reserve, and he's bought his first property. I'm assuming that he's already bought the first one, because if he can save $50,000 by 30, then he can also have $10,000 saved and $10,000 to buy a property. So I'm just going to start off with the property right outright. His monthly payment is $327. That's the interest plus the principal. And then his expenses paid, that includes all the same expenses that you had for the paid off property, so nothing's changed there. By 7 months into this, saving $1,000 a month plus earning $1,000 a month from the rental, 7 months later, he could put another $10,000 down to buy another property. Then, let's see, we go down to here, which is 31 and 1 month. So that's 6 months later, he's able to buy another property. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months later, he's able to buy the third property. 4 months later, another property. 4 months later, another property. 3 months later, another property. 2 months later, another property. And 3 months later, another property, and so on. So you can see how quick this is on the being able to incur it with debt. Now here at 50 units is at age 36 and 8 months. So at the age of 36 and 8 months, so 6 years and 8 months later, you could have 50 units making $50,000 a month in rent and having $213,000 in the bank. Now, obviously you'd be able to buy a whole lot more than that. And the reason why you see this disparity, it would be even faster than this. The reason why you see this disparity is because I only allowed in this equation for you to buy one property per month. So that's the limiting factor. Once you get to age 33, so less than 4 years after you started, you'd have 15 properties. You would then be able to buy one property every month for the rest of your life based on these numbers. It makes owning the property with debt service look really enticing. And if that's what you're willing to risk, then I say more power to you. There definitely is a lot of money in that. And this is what I was explaining in my other video about Dave Ramsey, is owning property outright is not the fastest way to gain wealth mathematically, but psychologically it's the best way, because you're taking on much less risk. When a property vacates, which I did not put in a vacancy factor, when a property vacates, that means you're not getting rent. So that would affect these numbers as well, a vacancy factor. If the interest rate goes up, let's say it's up to 10%. And for those of you who say, oh, 10%, that's a bunch of crock. Well, in the 80s, it got up to 17 and 18%. So at 10% interest, now, instead of buying a property a couple of months later, now we have to wait until 3/4 of a year has passed by. Like, oh, that's not much different. Well, before, it had taken me, so basically I get 1 month later. Not a huge difference with that 10% interest, honestly. Just not. Now, if I change this to 15 years instead of 360 months, it'd be 180 months. That would cause a difference too, because you need to be making more principal payment. If I change the rent, that would make a difference. If I change how much it costs for repairs, that would make a difference for each one of these. The repairs and all those constants are the same. The only difference between having the debt and not having the debt is the interest payment. Everything else equals out. So if I go up to 12%, you can still see that you're buying property much faster and able to get to the 100 units much faster with debt service than not, as long as these numbers are correct. Now, some people would say, hey, $1,000 a month for a $50,000 property, that is a 2% rule, and most investors look for the 1% rule. Fine. I will lower it to $750, and it'll take even longer. Now, I have duplexes that I bought, and the reason why I use these numbers, I bought duplexes for $25,000 a piece, and they were bringing in $450 per side. Not very long before you figure out that's $900 a month for $25,000 purchase price. So for a $50,000 purchase price to get $1,000 a month, I think that's realistic, especially because this is a gross number, not a net number. So now that I've changed it to $750, I'll change the interest back down to, let's say it's 7%. There you go, 7%. Now we look, once again, with debt, we're able to get up to 100 units, so 50 duplexes, within 9 years. Going debt-free, it's not until you're 52 years old, so almost 23 years old. 23 years old, then you'd be able to buy a duplex once a month at $50,000 coming in each month. The question was, can I do this before I'm 60? Absolutely. Stuart's only 31, and whether he goes debt-free or with debt service, either one's going to work. And in another video, I may show you how I'm going to do it. And I'll try to make this link available below for you to be able to download this Excel file, and if I can't, well, then I won't be able to. I'll just have to find some way for you to message me and for me to email it to you. All right, until next time, guys.